Hello everybody and welcome to Quotes for the Day. This is my first attempt at a Quotes for the Day video. What I wanted to do while we're here learning remotely is to share some ideas and some thoughts that might be relevant to some of my students or colleagues, particularly during this time, but at any point during their studies. Life has to go on and we have to go on and we have to do the very best we can as teachers and learners during this time. So I'm hoping that what these quotes will do will inspire you and get you thinking. Basically what I'm doing, I'm looking at books on my shelf, books that I use and have used, and finding inspirational quotes to get us thinking about things that might be relevant to us. So the first one I want to look at comes from a book I have dipped into many times, and this is Barbara Katz Rothman's Recreating Motherhood. And the reference is here so that you can be clear that you can access this book yourself and read more, and I would highly recommend it. The quote that I would like to read is from page 7. It's a quote about motherhood, and I think during times of difficulty and uncertainty, and just exploring how we understand motherhood and reminding ourselves of how motherhood is defined can help us to focus on what we really should be doing during this time if we're working with mothers. So I quote, "The old definition saw motherhood as a status. Women were mothers. Mothering was not something women did, it was something women were. Long after men came to have occupational choices, motherhood remained the all but inevitable lot of most women. Motherhood was, in fact, a master status, and everything women did was seen in terms of our motherhood, or our potential for motherhood. Motherhood and its demands, babies, children, and their demands, defined women. We had to be what they needed. The new language sees mothering as an activity, as service, as work, and children as the product of the labor of mothering. This is not acceptable. We cannot allow motherhood, the intimate, joyous, terrifying, life-affirming experience that is motherhood, to be reduced in this way. Perhaps this is one of those moments of crisis a society faces, where there are two paths to be taken. We can focus on nurturance, caring, and human relations. We can come to accept and to respect a wider variety of family relationships and arrangements. Those qualities we have come to think of as maternal could become more widely shared by both men and women. We could direct this nurturance, this maternal caring, not just to children, but to each other." And I want to end there. That ends on the top of page 8, because I think these are really relevant. We are at a moment of crisis, and there are opportunities now for us to look at how we embed values into the future going forward, both as people and for those of you who are midwives or professionals, as professionals. So I'm hoping that that gives you the first thing to reflect on, this idea of nurturance and of which path we choose in terms of our values and how we behave going forward. Second book that I'd like to read from is another one that I've dipped into many times, and this is an edited collection by Hunter and Deery, Emotions in Midwifery and Reproduction. I'd like to read from two places. First of all, the introduction, and then from Hunter's chapter on her work in emotion work in midwifery. So in the introduction, the editors identify on page 6, and I quote, "several key characteristics of emotional labouring jobs. They require contact with people, either within or external to the organisation. That the worker is required to manage their own emotions, but at the same time produce an emotional state in another. That although the worker may control their own emotional reactions, there is also the potential for employers to control emotional labour through training and supervision." So this idea that our work actually involves managing emotions and even eliciting emotions is something to think about in the current context when we're dealing with heightened emotions and we're dealing with a culture and a context of greater fear and uncertainty. There's something for us to reflect on, is where does that emotion work sit in what we do every day, and how can we achieve it? So in her study, Billy Hunter, this is on page 177, identified, and I quote, that there were two different approaches to managing emotion with different sets of feeling rules. Put simply, these can be characterized as affective neutrality, Parsons 1951, that is the suppression of emotion in order to maintain a professional image, or alternatively, affective awareness, aimed at managing emotions via sharing and support. Affective neutrality was more commonly described and observed in the behavior of hospital midwives, whilst community midwives were more likely to adopt an approach of affective awareness. These occupational norms regarding emotion are not arbitrary, but interlinked with organizational goals, Sutton 1991. Affective neutrality fits with an institution ideology, Hunter 2004, aimed at control and reduction of uncertainty. Minimizing the emotional content of childbirth is essential in order to rationalize the process and achieve organizational goals. In contrast, a with-woman approach focuses on meeting individual women's psychosocial needs. Integral to this is acknowledgement of emotional elements of care, as in affective awareness. Hunter, 2004. So that's where I end the quote. So both of these are quite relevant now to what we are doing and how we are managing as midwives and as professionals in this context and as students. So these quotes give us a chance to reflect on the work that we do and on how we as midwives can continue to maintain those relationships with women and to manage the emotional landscape that we are currently in. I don't have the answers. All I have are some quotes that I hope will help you to think about how you're working and how you're going to work in the future as well, as this crisis moves forward into a longer term situation. We're in a time of change, but we can adapt to it. And I'm just hoping that taking time out to think of these quotes and to think of these ideas will help you in your process of adaptation. Thank you, and see you next time.